We have a quorum.
We do. We can get started.
We can get started. All right. So I'm going to open up and welcome everybody to the governance committee, and we will start. We do have members of the public there, so I'm going to start with a quick introduction of everybody. My name is Pat Kimball. I'm a recovery advocate, an ally, and chair of the council, as well as chair of the governance committee. Betsy.
Betsy Fitzgerald representing subdivisions.
Grayson.
Hi, my name is Grayson Havens, and I'm with the Attorney General's office.
Thank you. Brendan.
Hi, I'm Brendan O'Neill. I'm with the Attorney General's office.
Katrina.
Hi, I'm Katrina Bonish. I'm with the Attorney General's office as well.
Thank you. Eric.
Hey, my name is Eric Small. I work for the Sanford Police Department, and I also represent the litigating subdivisions.
Thank you. And Mary.
Good morning. I'm Mary Coyne. I'm the coordinator for the Maine Recovery Council.
Thank you. All right. So today's agenda consists of discussing some changes in the bylaws. We're going to discuss the public forum requirement in the bylaws, discuss a little bit about bringing on new board members, and if there's any other discussion before this committee, you're free to bring that up. We're going to try to end this meeting at 12:30. All right. So Brendan, I am going to lead this discussion with some of the recommended bylaws changes that you have. Welcome, Gordon.
Pat, I wouldn't characterize them as necessarily recommended. They're potential bylaws changes. I just put together things that I have kind of spotted over time in the bylaws. But it's, you council members may have things you care more strongly about. Some of these are pretty technical, but some of them are important, I think.
Okay. Do you want to go over your list, or do you want me to start?
Well, why don't you start?
Well, I'm just going to look. I'm looking at your list. So I'm looking at your list, and one of the recommended changes is in section 8.1, that we change it to any changes need to be approved by 3/4 vote of the council. Notice of such changes must be provided in the notice of the meeting.
So right. So the the provision, 8.1, says that the council can vote to change the bylaws on a 3/5 vote of the members then in office, provided that the notice of the meeting itself, the council members, like the full council meeting, which the council does anyway, pursuant to FOA and its notice obligations, but that the notice also include the substance of the proposed change to the bylaws. That notice, that information is included in the notice. And I want to raise the question about whether or not that's necessary to include the substance of the proposed change to the bylaws. We ran into it when the council changed the bylaws to authorize the chair to have the authority to spend, up to, I think it's $5,000. We realized that the meeting at which that vote was taken did not, we did not anticipate that vote was going to happen at that time. And so we didn't include in the notice of that meeting the substance of the proposed change to the bylaws. And so for ease of functioning of the council, you may want to change to remove that requirement, but that also removes some transparency for the public. Do you want me to keep going through the whole list, Pat?
Well, I guess we'll go one at a time. Does anybody? For me, I'll talk about this one change that you're recommending. I think for transparency reasons, I think by putting it in the agenda, just informs the members of the council that will be discussed. a lot of times they like to process things. At this time, if it goes out with the agenda, they'll know that these changes are being recommended, and they'll have time before the meeting to be able to process and ask questions about it before the vote. So I sort of like that change. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I'm sorry, Pat, you like the change or you like the keep the language
No,
the same?
leave it the way it is what you mean,
Yeah.
Pat, not change it.
Yeah, leave it the way it is.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
All right, so that it's a helpful reminder that when the council, on a meeting by meeting basis determines that a change needs to be made to the bylaws, we just got to bring it to the next council meeting with the, proper notice in the, proper description in the notice of the meeting.
Yep.
And for that reason, because it hasn't been done previously to provide that kind of notice, I suppose for technical reasons, we'll, to the extent, we'll include the chair's authority in the notice of the November meeting.
Right.
Yep.
Any other discussion on that topic?
Just that I agree with it. I would just like to say that I do agree with it. I think it should stay the same because Pat has, or whoever the chair is in the moment, has the opportunity to have some influence over whether these votes should or should not take place, and easily could say that, we had no public notice and defer to another meeting. So I think that you're on track with that.
Yep.
Okay. That will stay the same. We're planning on changing section 5.4, which describes the chair's powers, to include a provision that the chair is authorized to expend up to $5,000, and we'll put that in that change in the notice of the November meeting.
Correct.
And that's the council's already voted on that, but it's fine to just quickly do it all over again.
Yep.
And then section 7.3B, 7.2 and 7.3 are about the conflicts of interest. 7.3 is the financial disclosure statement. This is about when the financial disclosure statement has to be submitted in relation to someone becoming a new council member. The language currently says, each council member shall submit an initial statement within the sooner of 30 days of initial appointment to the council or prior to being sworn in as a council member. That's a little confusing for me, and I think it's a little ambiguous. And I would just suggest, and I can explain this a little more fully, I would suggest actually striking the language that begins with within through the word or just before prior, so that the sentence reads instead, each council member shall submit an initial statement prior to being sworn in as a council member.
Mm-hmm.
The 30 days is not actually, needed, because I've learned from the Secretary of State's office that council members have to be sworn in within 30 days of appointment. So the sooner of 30 days of appointment or prior to being sworn in is actually the same time period. So it's just easier just to say, they should submit their initial statement prior to being sworn in as a council member.
Any
Okay.
comments? I'm fine with that.
Yep.
The next topic is kind of a bigger one. Section 4.2 is about the public meeting requirement. And this really raises the topic that's come up in the recent past about when and how the public should be able to address the council. Section 4.2, as Grayson and Mary and others have pointed out to me, and maybe Katrina and Haley before them, Section 4.2 requires that the council have, at least one meeting each year that's a public forum. The last time the council did a public forum was last November. Is that right? And so it hasn't, you know, each year you could interpret that to be a calendar year, or, within 365 days from the last one. I'm not sure that matters so much, but the point is, the bylaws require the council to have a public forum this year. It hasn't got one scheduled. No one's focused on this requirement until now. So there's really two questions here. What does the council want to do about the public forum requirement for this year? And the second is, does the council want to, consider more broadly the topic of public input? And by that I mean, we got the council got an inquiry from a news organization, over the last several months about that was, surveying all state such councils about, the opportunity for the public to address the council. As you know, the council has not, the council's public meetings are not structured in a way to include a public comment section. And if it wanted to, it could include that, and it could, do it in whatever way it saw fit at each public meeting. Separately, Mary and I, and I think maybe Grayson, met recently with some, potential, with a potential grantee of the council that is already slated to get a contract from the council. And that issue actually came up in that meeting, where that grantee said, "Oh, I thought we couldn't." I had suggested that if they had questions about the, use of the funds, they could ask a council member. And they said, "Oh, I thought we couldn't. I thought there was no way for us to do that. I thought that the council was kind of a black box, that there was no way for folks to address the council." I pointed out that there's the council's email that is open 24 hours a day. But, there may be other ways in which the council wants to make available itself to the public or to hear from the public. So those are two things. One is, what does the council want to do about the public meeting? And second, what does the council want to do about public input, as a larger issue?
Well, I've got some thoughts that I can't raise my hand. So can I have the floor for a second?
You may have the floor, Gordon.
So I have two thoughts. Number one, I think that it's important to have a forum each year if that's what's in the bylaws. And I think the simplest solution to that is perhaps for the December meeting, tack on or take the last part of the meeting, an hour, whatever, and introduce it as a public forum and allow anyone to address the council. We could, at a November meeting, or at we can talk about whether we want to give any direction to that, but at least it would provide for public discussion. A lot of us have thought about, well, should we, as part of the council meeting, always have opportunity for public comment at the end? But while I think that's a good idea, and some councils do this, I think that in truth, we've been so busy trying to get through our own business that we have not accomplished that. But I think to meet the black letter law, so to speak, of the bylaws, we could do that in December. I think for that's obviously inadequate in terms of, well, what should be our ongoing policy on public forums. We should simply have that as an agenda item for the council, because I think everybody will want to weigh in on this. I mean, I could see everything from once we get through our slew of this original, the new council, we'll be able to benefit from the work of these previous 2 years. And so they might consider going out around the state and having public forums, or at least once a year, or once or twice a year. So I think it just requires a larger discussion about how do we want to institutionalize the public forum provision of the bylaws. And that should be a discussion at the full council meeting. Thank you.
So what I hear, and I think I agree with Gordon. I think that you've heard it a couple times from the current council. So my recommendation, I think at this point, is that I wouldn't change the wording in the bylaws until the new council came on board, until we had that put that on the agenda and had a discussion amongst the council when they get on board in probably not the December meeting, but maybe January meeting, that we look into how we allow public to have much more of an input than they do. And I think it's important. So I wouldn't recommend that we currently change it. And I do think we can't do it at the November meeting. And I do think that we could recommend to the council that part of the December meeting, we open up for public comment. That'll be the meeting that we bring the newest members on board. And then we do have, I think we have 8 or 9 returning members. So it'll be a nice mixture. It'll be an opportunity for people to meet the newest members of the council as well as open it to the public. I think it's a suggestion we could bring to the council to vote on. That would make us a little bit behind because it says within the year and the last one was in November, but I think it's the only solution at the moment that makes sense.
I think in order to meet the letter of the bylaws, I think that's kind of the way you have to do it. So,
You know, just to point out the bylaws, I think there's a little squishiness there. Like the bylaws definitely say, at least one meeting each year shall include a public forum. It doesn't say that a meeting shall happen within a year of the last public forum. So,
Others thoughts?
Let me, sorry, Eric, I see you going off mute. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say Pat's can finish my sentence. Like I agree with her. Table it till the next council for a broader idea, but maybe do it in December to fill the bylaws. I'm hesitant to make big decisions for the council when I'm not on it for more than another 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. And I would hate to change things. So I don't want the word used drastically, but I think that it needs to be a decision of all 15 as to how they want to include the public and how we work that. And so I again, changing the bylaws now and then turning around, and in 2 months changing them back. I think to leave them the same with the ability to change if the council, if it's the pleasure of the council.
agreed.
I'll just flag that having the public forum as part of any meeting, any regular council meeting, presents some logistic challenges in the sense that, and I think this is for, I'm flagging this really for those of us who help to administer the meetings. I don't know how I don't know how the Zoom license works where you can allow somebody to speak, but not everybody, try to avoid Zoom bombing and things like that. That's something that I think we'll have to work on and figure out settings and so forth to allow for the person running the meeting to elevate a particular speaker at a time, and not have it be, too out of control. And then
I
there's,
know
space issues.
I know that the Penobscot County commissioners, they do public comment before every meeting. And often they come in via Zoom, the people commenting. I don't know how they do it, but they allow so many minutes at the beginning of their meeting to do it. And it seems to work for them. I don't know how they do it, but people are both in the audience and via Zoom.
So it sounds like we should plan for the December meeting to include some version of a public forum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, we'll anticipate that.
Yeah. And if we're not ready to do the Zoom, if we're concerned about it, we can say it has to be in person.
And while we're on the topic, we were, Mary, Katrina, Grayson, and I were discussing earlier the December meeting, and we're anticipating that the suggestion that we have, I think, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that be scheduled in the same way, in the same cadence as the council's other meetings. So I think it's December 12th that we're looking at as a target date for that.
Yep.
And that would be the first meeting of the new council. And Pat, there's probably, this meeting is the right one in which you should address how the, new council members are going to be, how the next council is going to be sworn in and so forth. But I see, Grayson is raising his hand.
Hey, Grayson.
I just have a quick question. I know the last time there was a public forum, it was noticed to a different degree. Like he put out a press release, and I'm wondering if you guys would want that for this public forum as well.
The thing is that it has to be a full council decision. So we can't really make that decision until they act on that at the November meeting. So if you, Grayson, will keep that question in mind, Grayson, we can ask at that point if they want to do the same public notice as we did before.
Perfect. Thank you.
But this group really can't make the decision to make that December meeting a public forum.
And it could be that the council decided to do it that way because it was relatively new, and it was trying to get the word out.
Right.
We've seen from the both the LOI and the grant process that the council appears to have pretty broad reach around the state in terms of its work. So, anyway.
All right.
I had a flag in here just to kind of review the remote meeting requirements. I sort of skimmed through them earlier. I don't personally see, there's the remote meeting policy, and then there's section 4.5, which says that the council can have remote meetings pursuant to the remote meeting policy. So I just wanted to flag it in case, to solicit from the council members or from, Mary or Grayson or Katrina, whether there's anything about the remote meeting policy or the way the council's been having, its hybrid or fully remote meetings that, needs to be thought through differently.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I do have a thought. I guess the perspective of people that are always at the meeting in person. Pat, that's usually there. What is it like to not have people not there? Because, being 2 hours away, I have tended to do remote just because it seems to be easier as far as getting the rest of the day accomplished. And like Miles being 5 hours away, I understand why he needs to be remote. What is that like from your perspective, not having us there in person?
So I can share with you as someone that has to chair it. It is extremely difficult to chair a hybrid meeting. So you're trying to see who's there plus who's up on the screen, And so sometimes meeting management can be a little tricky. I prefer in person, but I think, Eric, your point is really valid. If we want this committee, this council to be represented statewide, I think we have to do it the way we're doing it. Other than that, I mean, again, here's Miles, 3 hours for Betsy. It's a long haul. Plus, it's Maine. There's Maine weather that's always to be considered, and the most of the members, the majority of the members, are very, very busy people. And so when you have to add travel time onto the time that you're at the meeting, it's more time that you're away from your everyday job. So as much as for meeting management, it's easier to do it one way or the other, not both. I think for the sake of the way the state works out and everything else, I think it works.
Yeah, from my perspective, it works. I was just
Yeah.
curious. Yeah, for me, and I'm only 2 hours, that's an entire day to go to a meeting. For Miles, it's a lot more than that. So I would prefer to keep it the way we keep it.
Yeah.
We have
And for busy people like Kina, often she's at the clinic, can't leave, but
Right.
she can keep track of the meeting and do her stay where she needs to be and be. So again, it allots us, I think, a better attendance at the meeting, which is what you want.
Well, I know I can speak for myself that there have been a couple of meetings that I would not have been able to attend had I not been able to be remote. So I appreciate the opportunity.
It is.
I'll point out three sort of technical things about remote meetings. One is when the meetings, like the committee meetings, are fully remote, like this one. I find that being able to hear everybody and understand everybody works well. But when it's a hybrid meeting and we're using the owl, and Eric, I'd be curious about your perspective on this. When I've participated remotely in a full council meeting that was hybrid using an owl, I couldn't hear anything. And you can, I think, experience that when you watch the council's meetings on YouTube. We've explored, but I think we need to sort of re-explore. It's possible to buy like an additional device that extends the owl's microphone to help with being able to hear things. And Katrina's taken some steps to try to rearrange the desks so that people are closer to the microphones. That's one issue that I experienced, but I'm also increasingly hard of hearing. The other technical issue that's more about sort of meeting management that I want to float or flag is, I've heard that, sometimes remote meeting policies have conditions on the use of the chat. And, the council may want to consider whether or not to limit the use of the chat, because it can lead to comments being missed or not being heard, or things like I don't know how you, like I have found it to be sort of difficult to keep track of both speakers, like Eric, or people in the room, while others are dropping comments in the chat. And I don't know whether the chat is visible on a YouTube recording.
So I have two things on the chat. Is one, the public cannot see it, and two, it is not visible on YouTube. So it interferes with our transparency if we use it.
And I don't know whether a record is kept, like whether we could go back and sort of, I guess not. Katrina's shaking her head. And then the third issue is sort of related to the public forum. Somebody, Grayson or Katrina, pointed out that at the last, I guess it was yesterday's meeting, various members of the public had raised their hands, trying to address the council. And I don't know whether that was visible. So anyway, those are three technical considerations.
So you said yesterday people were trying to raise their hand?
So it's
Not council members, but members of the public.
yeah, it's not
Attendees.
uncommon for members of the public to raise their hand during our meetings because they want to put in their input.
Okay. And they don't have the ability for chat. So one of the things we may want to do is at the beginning of the meeting, remind the public that they don't have the ability at this point to be recognized, but remind them that we do have an email address, and they are more than welcome to email information to us, and just remind them at the beginning of the meeting. I also think that I don't know if it needs to be in the bylaws, but again, it's a procedural thing. I think we need to tell the membership that if they use the chat, they need to know that that's not seen by the public. It's also not recorded in any way on the YouTube, and to please use it limitedly.
I don't think you have to put that in the bylaws. I think you can
I don't
just
either. I think that's just a
remind,
procedure thing.
yeah, just say, hey,
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah, to remind people that. I will tell you, I'm old and my eyes are old, and I can't even read the chat when they put it up there at the meeting. I whisper to Mary often and say, what does that say in the chat? Because I can't read it. Welcome, cataracts. So those, I think, are probably procedures more than changes to the remote policy.
Yep.
That's all. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The next thing on my list is to check whether and Pat, I think you asked for this, to check whether the committee wanted to revisit the sort of the FOA amendment that this committee considered previously, made a recommendation to the full council, and then the full council, it didn't pass the full council. To remind the members of the committee, what happened at that full council meeting was there was a series of abstentions, and we haven't gone back and talked to the folks who abstained, but it did raise, it highlighted a concern about the abstention language, which is sort of the next topic in the bylaws for consideration. But the first question is, whether this committee wants to revisit that discussion of the FOA requirements, and what steps you'd want to take.
If to remind people, it's the part in the bylaws that states that 3 members.
Yeah, let me find the provision. It says, section 4.6, notice of meetings. Public notice shall be given of all meetings of 3 or more council members. I had suggested previously that upon a rereading of FOA's requirement in which is section 406 of FOA, that the 3 or more person requirement is not accurately stated in the bylaws. That according to FOA, public notice needs to be given of all public proceedings of this body, regardless of whether it's 2 members or 3 members, so long as the members are generally talking about, sort of the deliberations of the council or the transactions of any functions of the council.
And that your suggestion was voted. No, we couldn't vote because too many people abstained, and we didn't
motion
have.
Failed. It failed because
It failed.
An abstention has to count as a negative vote.
Correct.
Yeah, and that gets into the next suggestion about how the council wants to count abstentions, which we're happy to go into now, but happy to hold that off until this discussion's finished. I'm purposely, let me clarify for the committee members. I'm purposely not going into the same level of detail on the FOA issue because I'm not sure that the committee, wants that at this time. I can go into it in more detail, if this committee wants to revisit that.
Is there a strong way, one way or the other, whether we revisit this or we wait?
Revisit. I'm losing the train here. Revisit the 3 or more, or how to count abstentions.
Yeah. So thank you, Betsy. That's helpful to clarify. The section in the bylaws, section 4.6, says that requires the council to give public notice of meetings of 3 or more council members.
Right.
And the point I had made is that that doesn't comply with FOA, because FOA requires, in my view, that meetings of any council members, as long as you're talking about the business of the council, requires it to be a public meeting.
And I think the council in general, Brendan, said, "Oh, come on."
Yes, they did. That's right.
We said, no, that's just silly.
This committee had originally recommended to the council to make that change, to change that provision of the bylaws. And then the full council, through abstentions and through, didn't gain enough votes to adopt that recommendation.
Right. So it stays at 3 or more becomes the notice. And if 2 of us, we're going to go down a rabbit hole and we're never going to come out again.
Mm-hmm. Right. At the end of the day, the council's bylaws can't override FOA. FOA's state law. Right. It is what it is. Right. And if 2 council, if council members are meeting in a way that doesn't comply with FOA, it doesn't matter what the bylaws really say. I would argue that, and I've argued to the council that its bylaws are, in this respect, not compliant with FOA or not matching FOA is a better way to put it. But the practical effect is, as council members have heard me say, I think that if a couple of council members are getting together and transacting the business of the council, it really needs to be part of a public meeting.
Mm-hmm. But if I think we have all said, and certainly Pat has said this about a gazillion times, we are simply members of the council. We don't make decisions unless right. we are all together making a decision. And so if I call up Pat and we talk about something that the council's doing, we're not making a decision. We're just kind of right. having a conversation.
Right, but that also that is considered to be sort of the deliberations of the council. Like if you and Pat get together and you talk about something that's not about the council business, or if you talk about logistics of the council, like the minutes or the schedule or the agenda or things like that, or maybe the agenda arguably could even be, but anyway, leaving that aside, like if the 2 of you are just talking about being council members, maybe that's not deliberating about the business of the council. But if the 2 of you are talking about a particular motion or a particular contract or something, and like, wow, I don't think we should do that, what do you think? That could be considered to be deliberating about the transactions of the council. And courts in Maine are instructed by the law to view FOA as very broadly and to cover lots more than it might otherwise. And this provision, this issue about 2 versus 3, there isn't an exact case on it that we've identified. But in general, I think that the statute says that there has to be public notice for public proceedings. If those proceedings are a meeting of a body that consists of 3 or more persons. So, the the statute, I'm not, the statute says what it says, and, I'm trying to help the council, comply with FOA.
So is the recommendation we just leave it at this point?
That would, I think that's what we ought to do,
Yeah.
but I'm just me.
Well, do I hear any objections to just leaving it? Yeah, I don't see any. So, all right, Brendan, why don't you move to the next one, which actually is a change suggestion.
Actually, I'm sorry, I couldn't get to my mic.
Sorry, Eric.
I couldn't get to my mic fast enough.
Oh.
What kind of, as I'm listening to Brendan a little bit, he is saying that there's no way around it. So I don't think we can just leave it. I mean, we have to take legal advice from him. I don't necessarily agree with it because, and maybe he could explain this, like I know our city council is 3 or more councilors together. It's not considered a meeting, and I'm sure they talk about anything they want to. So I don't know if we're different than a city council, and if we are, please tell me how. But if this is FOA, there's, like you said, there's no way around it. So how do we get the full council to wrap their head around there's no way around it? That's kind of the question.
But I think we've done that because we're 3 or more, aren't we?
Yeah, but it might be that, I mean, the attorney general of the state of Maine is telling us something that is legally factual. So I don't know how we can not do it. We can vote to not do it all day long, but in the end, it's illegal. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brendan. Like, if it's illegal, we shouldn't be doing it. People should just say acquiesce, I guess, and say, yo, that's the law. There's no way around it.
Eric, part of what I see my job is helping the council, minimize risk that its actions are going to be challenged in some respect. If 2 council members get together and just you can imagine sort of a scenario in which there's like a game of telephone. A couple of council members talk about a thing. One of them calls another council member. They talk about it. Another, and then, that sort of keeps going, and it's no more than 2 people at a time. Maybe that creates a risky situation that somebody gets a word of, and then it becomes a FOA issue. The one thing I'll say about whether the council is different from city councils, it's not. FOA applies the same to every the statute says it applies to any group that's 3 or more persons. When this group considered this previously, I had circulated a link to a YouTube video of a presentation that the FOA ombudsman made to the Lewiston City Council, and she made what I heard to be sort of the same point in response to, one or more of the council members asking the same question. I think their rule was 4 or more people. And they were equally, and I get it, sort of startled by the idea that they couldn't, talk about the business that they're engaged in with the council, outside of the council itself. And so, I'm happy to recirculate that. I can't really speak for her.
Well, I guess now I understand. I hear it differently from that perspective, that it's you're trying to eliminate the risk, because there are fines involved if you violate this.
I haven't looked too closely at individual council members' liability under FOA, and I'm probably not going to spend much of my time on that, but I'm more concerned about making sure that there's no risk to the council's decision-making process on a particular issue, or there's less risk. I don't know that nobody can be perfect, but my job is to help the council identify risk and to lower it.
I think maybe, Pat, this council has heard this, but maybe this does get revisited for the next council, and they would have.
I think that's a good suggestion. with only one real meeting left, I think at that point, we
Yeah.
just put it on for the next council to review and evaluate it. Because I agree with you, Eric, but I think at this point, with one more meeting left, we let that go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right. Last but not least,
Hey,
change
Pat,
in the impact of abstention. Yes?
I see Courtney's joined us. Do you,
Oh, hi,
she may
Courtney.
want an opportunity to introduce herself. And I think we've lost Gordon.
I think Gordon is gone and Courtney has appeared. So, Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Courtney Gary Allen. I'm the executive director of MIRAP. I apologize for my tardiness. I was in an ethics violation hearing. Not my ethics violation, somebody else's ethics violation.
I'm sure it was not yours. Courtney, what we are in this, we're at the meeting is we're just going over a few of the parts of the bylaws that we just want to tighten up or review. And we're actually on the last section, and I'll review I think where we are at the moment is the only real changes that we're recommending is we're putting in the already voted on $5,000 authorization of the chair, and then under section 7.3, which is in regards to the financial statement, we're just rewording that so that it's a little clearer as to when that is due by council members. And I think those are the only, and we'll talk about the public forum thing in a minute. We've decided that in section 4.2, the council is to have a yearly public forum. We're not going to make any changes in that. And in order to comply with it, we will, as part of the December meeting, we will be recommending to the council in November as part of the December meeting that we make that public, and that we encourage the next group of councilors to look at ways to better involve the public being able to participate in our meetings. But we'll leave that to the next term of councilors and not make any changes at this point. And then now we're on the last recommended areas to look at, which is in regards to the impact of abstentions in the way we vote.
That
So
all
that's
sounds wonderful. Yeah, that all sounds wonderful, Pat. I think I had been the one that brought forward a discussion around public comment at Maine Recovery Council meetings based on a article that came out at the national level that Maine was one of the only states to not allow it. And I 100% agree that it's not an issue for this particular council, but it's a conversation to be had for future councils.
Yeah, and I think it was Gordon who brought up that we can bring it up in one of the first couple meetings. Do we have that open discussion in regards to how we do that? And as you know, Courtney, even though you won't be with us, we're always there for you to listen in and give us some feedback. So,
well, I'll probably be the first one in line on your public hearing. So
excellent.
I will have a new role in the grand scheme of the council's work. Back to just being an advocate.
Thank you. All right, Brendan.
The last item on the list of potential changes is whether to consider a change to the rule about abstentions. Section 4.7, talks about how the council will make its decisions. And the document that was emailed around suggests a potential change in which it's the second sentence. The first sentence is the council shall act by consensus. The second sentence is in the event consensus cannot be achieved, the council shall make decisions by a 3/5 vote of its members present in person or by remote method. And a potential change could be to say the council shall make decisions by a 3/5 by 3/5 of votes cast. The rationale here is that when this came up from time to time when members abstain, the question is whether the council intends abstentions to impact the vote, or whether, and I'm probably not saying that right, whether abstentions are meant to have the same impact as a no vote, or whether they're truly meant to be sort of taken out of the voting calculus. So the right now, the way the bylaws are written, an abstention equals a no vote. The other way to do it is to have somebody abstain, and then you count the votes of the people who are not abstaining, who are actually counting votes, and figure out what's 3/5 of that. And so
that certainly would make more sense.
Courtney?
And whether this language accomplishes that is like, it may, maybe there's better language for that. But in terms of the policy, I think that's the first question.
Courtney, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Brendan, I mean, I think that makes complete sense. I mean, I don't think my intention when I voted in the bylaws was to count abstentions as a no vote, and I think it has changed the outcomes of votes on multiple occasions. And my understanding of like the way that my city council does it is like if I abstain, my vote isn't calculated in the needing 51% of a council to pass an ordinance or something like that. I don't think I've ever been on anything where abstentions equal a no.
Thank you, Courtney. And I agree. I think by changing this wording in the bylaws, there's always been a discussion around the council when this happens. This just clarifies it. It makes it clear that if you abstain, your vote is not counted in the count for a quorum. So I would recommend, and I don't know what anybody else feels. I think the change actually clarifies things for everybody.
Oh, that's actually that's a question. How do you calculate quorum then? Would it be quorum of 15? You need quorum of 15 to have a valid vote, or
I'm going to offer Grayson the opportunity to weigh in here, but you shouldn't feel required to. I mean, my understanding is the quorum of a council meeting, a full council meeting, I think a quorum is what, 8 or 8.5. I think it's 8. And so I think you calculate quorum. Grayson, is quorum calculated by the number of people present?
Yes, I don't think this change would affect quorum necessarily.
Okay.
So is there a hypothetical world? I don't think this would happen, and I hate when people do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Is there a hypothetical world where 10 people abstain for some reason, and then you have 5 people left? So you would need. Never mind. Never mind. I'm not going down that road.
So
I have a feeling that when weird things like that start to happen, maybe a motion gets pulled back.
Yeah.
I would just say, I would think if something like that did happen, I would interpret that as the outcome of that just being that the threshold to get to 3/5 would be lower than it would be otherwise.
So for this committee, we will be recommending to the council only the following changes. The changes in the wording of 7.3 and the changes in 4.7. So 7.3 is just the wording of the financial statement, and then 4.7, which clarifies the abstention vote. And those are the only 2 changes in the bylaws that this committee is going to recommend. Am I correct in that? So can I hear a motion that those 2 changes be recommended to the full council? for the change in the bylaws?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Eric seconded. Grayson, can you call a vote, please?
Of course. Betsy Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Courtney Gary Allen,
Yes.
Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Eric Small.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. And Brendan, I'm assuming the 5,000 for the chair to approve, that's already been approved, right?
It's already been voted on by the council. We just need
Okay.
to notice it properly according to the bylaws.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. The only one of the other items on the thing was the public forum. And what I heard from earlier discussion, what we're going to do at the November meeting is just briefly say to the current council members that a public meeting, part of the December meeting will be a public meeting, and have a brief conversation about how long that can have and how we advertise it. Is there any other discussion in regards to that? All right, cool. The other thing is the discussion on the election of officers. I am assuming, and I'm looking for your input, that this governance committee, which usually takes nominations and presents them to the board, isn't going to do that, as some of the members here will not be, again, we will have new membership, and we want the full membership to be able to be part of the nomination of next year's officers for the council. Is anyone else want to have a different opinion of that, or a different way to move forward with that?
I would just suggest, Pat, that you provide your new council with an opportunity to submit names at the December, like tell them at the December meeting that they can submit names, and then give them time to do that. I don't know what the time frame would be, like 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah, I think according to the bylaws, it has to be 30 days. So we can look at that. I think, Courtney, that's a good suggestion. The one thing that we need to talk a little bit about is, Brendan and I talked about it, because there's a gap. And so the role of all of us are done November 22nd. And then in December, we're all sworn in. But the point, if we don't have at least a temporary chair, contracts can't be signed. That's the most important thing. And contracts are ready to go out. So I don't want to be the only one making that decision. So I think I'd like to have the discussion on if people would object to it, that December meeting, if a temporary chair, just until in January, when the new slate of offices come on board, if a temporary chair can be voted in at the December meeting, so that we're able to sign invoices and contracts.
Could I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
I can't raise my hand for some reason. Why not suggestion that the current slate of officers continue to serve until January 1? It's the same thing. And it would, I mean, it's kind of a smooth transition, because you're not asking somebody to come in and the learning curve is straight up.
Yeah, yeah. And you can word it so that the new officers are elected at the annual meeting. That's how the bylaws are. So you could recommend that well, who's there?
It's just me.
Just you. That's the only one that wouldn't be. But we have two co-chairs. So Bruce will be there, hopefully. And so you'd have a full slate. But Brendan, here's the legal question. Will that have to happen at the December meeting with the new council, or does that have to happen at the November meeting?
I think it's the new council. So
Okay.
I think it's the December meeting, my suggestion is that, the new council can, elect an interim chair and can decide, to carry forward the existing officers until the annual meeting. I mean, and I'd be interested in hearing, from other council members who are on, boards and commissions, what this sounds like. But I think that would be fine to have officers and a chair on an interim basis, until the new governance committee can solicit and put forward nominees.
I've never been on a board before where everyone was off at the same time, to tell you the truth. Usually it's staggered.
Yeah, we didn't think of that.
Yeah.
When I realized that, I was like, how did all of us have our hands on this piece of legislation and no one thought of that? Literally no one. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds fine to me if it's fine with the new council. I think, Pat, you bring up the most important part is just having an interim chair. I think we do have some precedent of that, right? Like on our first
Correct
meeting of this council. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so maybe I'd land at stick with the precedent and appoint an interim chair for December, so you can get through December and you can sign your contracts and you can do your things, and then do your election in January of the full slate appointment, whatever you call it.
I want Mary's invoices signed, and we don't want, if those SSP contracts are out and running, let's get those signed and out of here. We've waited long enough.
I'll also suggest that at that December meeting, the chair invite interested parties to be on the governance committee, and that you schedule a governance committee, pretty quickly after that first December meeting, for the purpose of, considering, recommendations to the council for the officers. And then you give the new council members an opportunity, but a short one, to submit nominations to, or, whatever, to that governance committee. So you schedule a governance committee, you solicit, from, at that meeting, people to be on the governance committee. The interim chair can appoint those people to the governance committee. And then you can have that discussion at the governance committee, and then 30 days later, have the next council meeting where they're, voted in.
Sounds like a plan. Any other comments about that? And we'll move forward with that. All right. Unless anyone has any other business come before governance.
Just one more thing. I think that it probably makes sense for the council to write into, it's probably the next council, to write into its bylaws the process for, transitioning to a new council. Whether it takes place at governance or somewhere else, probably, and I think you were trying to accomplish this, to have the governance committee start earlier, give notice to the appointing authorities, try to have the whole process take place like 30 days sooner than now, things like that. But I think it's appropriate for the council and its governance committee to, have control over that, transition.
Yeah, because there's things, particularly the litigating subdivisions and the way those nominations worked was a little bit different than we thought. Courtney?
Yeah, and I think you all will have some more clear direction the next time around, because it's more clear about who will be leaving. If you're termed out if you've been on for 2 terms, it's a more clear that you're leaving, I guess. So you can prepare better.
Yeah, we know exactly who's leaving. Yeah. Yep. I think it is. Again, it was one of the things that we didn't, again, with the litigating partners, we didn't realize we have absolutely no control over that. It's totally up to them.
Does
reach
anyone
out.
know how that process happens? Because I still haven't figured it out.
I think the short answer is they figure it out and they don't have to tell us. I mean, it's just, it's a, if the individual appointed members from the litigating subdivisions, want to discuss it, I think that's up to them. But the short answer is the litigating subdivisions have their process for determining who their appointees are, and we get a name from their attorneys.
Well, that's like the weird part because my city has no idea how they're doing it, and we're one of the litigating partners. So would it be like my city manager should call their lawyer, the lawyer?
They're getting a letter from the lawyer. So they should be receiving either an email or a letter from Adam Lee. And that letter, that will give them the procedure as to how to appoint. We've also asked Adam if he could please put in that letter that of the four appointees, 3 of them have asked to return. We can't tell them who to vote for or whatever, but Liz and Betsy and Todd have all put a desire. Eric is not. But so we did tell them that. Now, that doesn't mean anything except we asked them to put that in the letter, that those 3 individuals who have served for 2 years would be more than willing to serve another term. But they submitted.
I guess this is a question for this. I'll ask my city manager to ask the lawyer, but this is a question that I don't understand is like that then who votes on which people? Who's the voting parties?
Each of the litigating subdivisions originally were asked if somebody there was interested in serving, and some of us put our names in, and then there was a ballot that went out and you got to vote. And the people who got the most votes were selected. And then there was a runoff for the 4th seat. 3 of them were majority, and then there was a runoff for the 4th seat. So that's how the 4 originally were elected by the litigating subdivisions, who each one had a vote.
Okay, and who is it like the city manager or the county commissioner or?
I assume it was the city manager. I don't know that. Well, no, I take that back because Sue Robertson and I had a conversation. So she said that this is what she had done. So I guess it's the city manager.
Okay, yeah, because I never got a ballot as an elected.
No. I think it was just whoever the attorneys had been communicating with all along through the process was, I suspect, the contact person for who got to vote. Because I represented in the case of my jurisdiction, I did the vote for that jurisdiction because I was the contact person.
Okay, so the executive of whatever.
Pretty much. I would guess so, Courtney. I assume that.
Okay.
Eric, do you know any different?
And he intends to do whatever he did the last time. He intends to do the exact same thing this time.
Yes, he does. Yep.
I have no idea. I just showed up and they told me.
Okay, great.
That's the way to do it, Eric. Make it simple.
Yep.
So
sorry, I'm the one that thinks about all the ways, all the like minutia, like how votes happen stuff.
Yeah, well, it was a very interesting process because again, most of it was simple. It was the governor's office. It was the Speaker of the House. It's the litigating partners that we just got figured it out. And I talked to him Monday, I believe, and it's being moved, and we're hoping by December we'll have that process done and be able to bring on the new members. So
Hey, Pat, can you confirm the next meeting is on the 14th at 1:30? Is that correct?
The next meeting is at
12:30.
we've moved it up an hour, which we need to put a big notice out to people.
Okay, I'm
It
glad
is
I
the
asked.
14th, and we have moved it up an hour to be able to ensure that we have time to look at the grantees and make those decisions about the awards.
This is a
And it's
4-hour
like-
meeting.
Oh yeah, I
4
promised
hours.
snacks
With a break.
And a
in the middle.
break.
and a
And a
break.
break in the middle.
Promised
But Eric,
snack
it is
break.
Is it
And this
chief
was not
now?
all my idea, Eric. I'm not taking full credit for a 4-hour meeting.
It's okay.
I participated.
I'm glad I asked. Just wanna make sure.
I participated in this. Is it chief now, Eric? Did you get appointed?
Yeah, you could just call me Eric.
No, chief. I like it. I still call Jared Mills chief, even when the real chief's in the room. It's important. We all decided. I know 4 hours, but it's like where we're gonna make our final decisions around the funding.
It was the only way to get this council to be able to make the decision they really wanted to make. And that was awarding these funds. If otherwise, it would have been the new council awarding it. There was no way before the 22nd of November. So that was the decision.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, well, I promised snacks, so we'll figure this out. All right, is there any other business to come before the governance committee?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, look at that motion to adjourn, and we're moving forward. And look at this, it's 12:15. Everybody got out
Good
on
job.
time. Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Bye bye.